Starting. All right. So we're going to hold on here just a half a minute, so we'll make sure we're afternoon before we get started with this program on grants for small businesses. Since our clock here says we're right at noon, just want to give people a chance to get plugged in. Maybe this is a good time, actually, just to do a quick introductions, and then we'll go straight into the program. So I'm Steve Morris with Oregon Best and the Oregon Technology Business Center, which is where we're broadcasting from today. And Leon, would you like to?
I'm Leon Wolf, also from the Oregon Best, specializing in the SBIR assistance that we provide. And hello.
All right, and we.
Why don't we mention that they should click the play button?
Yeah. I think it's catch-22. I think if they don't click it, they won't hear it. But and we'll see if we have. We'll see if we get any viewers. I think none so far. And again, we had, since this is time number 2, we'll see if we get any, but who knows. If nothing else, we'll have a second recording. So with that, I think we might as well leap into it.
Great. Well, hello and welcome to an introduction to federal grants for startups. My name, as Steve said, is Leon Wolf, and today I'm going to give you an overview of the Federal SBIR STTR programs with an eye and a focus on determining whether or not this is the right type of funding for your company, or if you're with the SBDCs, if for the companies you may be in a position of advising. And at the end of today's talk, we're going to give you a preview of an exciting event on federal grant funding that's going to be in the Portland area in August, and how to prepare for that. So on the logistics side, Steve and I would like to ask that if you have a question, go ahead and please post that by typing it into the question box on the Google Hangout window. And we're going to queue up all the questions to ask after the few slides that we have.
And you should see that QA panel off, hopefully, on the right side of your screen. You can just type those questions in at any time, and we'll run down the list at the end.
Great. And it looks like, we've got 4 viewers now, so we'll go ahead and start with the content. But yeah, so please, we'd love to get your questions, and there's ample time at the end, but please post them expecting that you'll have to wait a few minutes. Next slide. Please.
And with that, we will switch over to our slides. Let's see, I just have to find, screen share. There we go. And that one, and share. All right.
Great. Is it full screen for them?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so as I've already introduced, today I'm talking about the Federal Research and Development Grant Program known as SBIR and STTR, and those names stand for the Small Business Innovation Research, and its sister program, which is the Small Business Technology Transfer. It doesn't align with the acronym, which is a smaller sister program. And these are federal government funding programs that can provide $2 billion in total annually to small businesses that are developing high-risk technologies or some other form of innovation in the area that they serve. So what I'm going to tell you a little bit more is about the various agencies that do fund. I'm not going to go in depth, but some of the logos for these agencies are listed at the bottom, and names that should be familiar to most of you: the USDA, or United States Department of Agriculture, many branches of the Departments of Defense, including Army, Navy, and Air Force. The Department of Energy is another one, and the National Science Foundation. And we don't have time today to go into all these programs, but it would be more accurate to say that there's 11 different SBIR programs, each administered a little bit differently at each one of these agencies. And that's why we provide assistance, is to help you navigate some of those differences. So that's about all the info I'm going to provide on the program, but we will have some more resources and options for you to get more information when you're ready. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about why a company really should be interested or may be interested in applying for the small business research programs. to get this funding. And most importantly, you need money. Your company needs what's called non-dilutive funds to do high-risk research and development or product development at your company. By non-dilutive, what we mean is that this is purely a grant or a contract for your company. It is not a loan, and you're not giving away any equity or property rights to the government. This is strictly essentially a seed fund to get you started doing some of your high-risk science. So again, you keep the intellectual property and your data rights, although the government does have the ability to share some of that data. And the kind of money we're talking about here for small businesses varies from agency to agency, but it's typically for what's called the phase 1, which everyone must apply for, or the research phase, typically in the range of $100,000 to $150,000. And then for anyone who gets a phase 1, you become eligible to apply later for a phase 2 when you've completed your phase 1. And that is really where the big money is. That's more of the development phase, and the government recognizes that it can be very expensive to build full-scale prototypes and do field testing. So that can be in the range of half to up to $1 million, or in some cases even more at agencies like National Institutes of Health. So it's really quite a nice, healthy chunk of change if you're doing R&D, and very often can save you from getting expensive loans, particularly since at this stage you might not qualify for a loan and you would be deemed too high risk by either an SBA bank, approved bank, or a venture capital investment. So the other reason you might want to apply is that very often this can be a bridge to make your company and your research more attractive for external investment. Even if you're thinking of funding everything internally and bootstrapping your company, this can be a real shot in the arm. And if you are definitely needing capital to fund going up the ramp and bringing your product to market, you'll need some venture capital. This really is an external source of credibility and validation for your business and lowers the risk for those external investors. So again, it's really great. It's not necessarily for everybody, and it is a bit of work, but we're here again, and we'll talk at the end about how we provide assistance. So, okay, if you decide that this is something you are interested in, and at least you want the money and need this for the type of business you're in, there are certain eligibility requirements. So most importantly, you have to be a for-profit business. Nonprofits are not eligible. You have to be a small business, which is a pretty standard definition at the Small Business Administration of less than 500 employees, which probably will cover most people on the phone today. And you have to be at least 51% owned by a U.S. affiliate or an individual residing in the U.S. That other 49% can be venture firms or nonprofits, but again, this is for small businesses, so we don't want to, or the government does not seek to fund simply subsidiaries of larger businesses or offshore corporations. Then I mentioned the STTR program, the university-oriented sister program of SBIR. It's typically a much smaller program of several $100 million total funded compared to over $2 billion. But for those of you that might have university collaborations or seeking to spin off something from a university, the eligibility requirement there is at least 30% of the work as defined by the budget has to be done at a university, a college, or some other nonprofit U.S. research institution. So this is the kind of the standard definition of a small business and kind of the letter of the law, but just because you may be eligible doesn't mean it's a good idea. So here's kind of more of the spirit of the SBIR program, and what all the agencies, and it varying again from agency to agency, what they are looking for is an innovative technology, some unique invention that is aligned with the mission of the agency. And again, all 11 of those agencies have different missions and a slightly different focus. Some, like defense, are looking to champion or seed technologies that they at some point will be willing to buy or subcontract out that aligns with their mission of national security. Others, like the National Science Foundation, are very broad and are simply seeking to grow the body of knowledge as long as it's commercially applicable. So it really depends. And what constitutes innovative also varies from agency to agency. It doesn't necessarily have to be rocket science, although if you're thinking of applying to NASA, you definitely may have something that is rocket science. So it really depends, and we very often get questions about how innovative, how research-oriented does my company need to be, and the answer really depends. So we've seen funding and supported companies that simply have unique things for rural development that is a very high priority for funding at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And we've seen educational and training programs at Department of Ed or National Science Foundation. Again, there has to be something nobody else is doing, but it's not necessarily rocket science. And then, of course, there are some very deep technologies at, for instance, National Science Foundation or NASA. So it really depends. The second thing that you should ask yourself whether your company has is whether you have the horsepower to really do some of this research and deep technology investment. You don't necessarily have to have PhDs or experienced engineers and researchers on staff, but you may need them to do the work, and you should have access and ability to hire some of them, at least temporarily during the period you're doing product development, or potentially you may want to add somebody, and this funding is a great start to start paying that person a salary, who would eventually develop into a full-blown employee of your company. So that's important. And again, the principal investigator or PI eligibility varies from agency to agency, but in all cases, it has to be someone who's qualified to do the work, looks good, and looks like an asset to you in developing your technology or product, and has to be employed, but again, only temporarily during the period of the grant at your small business. You can't have somebody who's a contractor or working at a university just kind of moonlighting for your grant. So if you're, and then finally, the most important thing is the two letters SB in the acronym SBIR. This has to be a business. This has to be a commercially viable product and not just simply something that's a benefit to mankind and society or really a neat idea. There has to be a way that your business or somebody you license this to is going to bring this to market and presumably be successful on a national basis in generating revenue. This does not mean you have to have a full business plan or investors, but you just have to have some mature and reasonably experienced idea, reasonably well-informed idea about how you're going to go to market. So I see some questions queuing up, and that's great. I'll get to those at the end. So we have 2 more slides. So what's your next step? If your company does meet these criteria and you do think this is funding that you are interested in, to get more information, you can look both for national resources that can potentially generally provide more reading, or locally here in Oregon, 3 major sources of assistance. The most relevant to today's talk, if you receive this message from a small business development center, the Small Business Development Center has a statewide network, and the website here is listed, and it has many pages on the SBIR program about how to apply and what information you might need, and also an application for additional assistance from specific centers. And you'll have to apply to find out a little bit more about what that entails. The second thing is kind of what we're talking about here today, is assistance from Oregon BEST, which is a clean tech nonprofit state, partially funded by the state consortium for clean tech businesses. And we do have, again, a website which lists quite a bit more information on the program, as well as an ability to apply for assistance specifically from Oregon BEST. And at this point, it's good to mention that this is for any company in Oregon who is seeking to apply for SBIR, including biomed and defense. You don't have to have a clean tech topic. It is our area of expertise, but we take everybody. I think during the question and answer period, we'll describe those assisted services a little bit more. And then finally, on the state level, the entity known as Business Oregon, which is the actual state of Oregon's government economic development entity, has what's called a Phase 0 program, where they provide some funds for you to go out and seek private consulting assistance if you do apply for an SBIR. And that application, again, is on the website, which is listed in the comments on this Google Hangout, or you can Google it yourself by just typing Business Oregon SBIR. And I believe, but you should verify this on the website, that they'll provide up to $5,000 if you're seeking to hire someone to help you. And then if you're just looking for more general information, the US government now has a website simply called sbir.gov, which has a lot of information on past awards, and gateways to all 11 individual agencies that have SBIR programs. And then a really useful private website run by Zyn Systems, zyn.com, also has a gateway to all the websites and lists the calendar when the agencies are accepting applications and how to find out what it is that the solicitation topics are. Has a huge amount of other resources on and news on the SBIR program, and is very frequently updated. And I strongly recommend you bookmark and go to this website. And then finally, what we're here to promote today is called the SBIR Road Tour that I mentioned earlier. It's a one-day SBIR national event being held in Portland on August 20th. And we'll give you a bit more information here about that. It's a great opportunity to get some in-depth information on all 11 of the agencies, as well as potentially have a one-on-one which you can sign up for with the agency managers. It is, again, August 20th of this year, so less than a month away, from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock at the Doubletree Hotel here in Portland. It is hosted by Oregon Best in collaboration with Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, and the registration for that is listed to the right on the OEN website. And again, this will feature actual managers from the 11 federal agencies, some of them, not all, from Washington, D.C., with more specific information on their programs. When they're not presenting, you can have a 20-minute one-on-one if you're registered and sign up for these one-on-ones. You can't just walk in and do that. There's a very specific calendar, and once you register, you'll receive more information on the one-on-one slots and how to sign up. And then in the afternoon, there are going to be panels on some grants and other funding from the state agencies for tech and other innovative startups, as well as the more in-depth information on the resources I described on the last slide. So anyway, I can't stress enough what a great opportunity this is. Normally, you'd pay about $500 to attend a national SBIR conference just for the registration. And typically they're held back east and you'd have to travel. This event has a nominal registration fee of $35, but it includes breakfast and lunch, so it's virtually free. And I can't stress, it's not likely to come back to Portland anytime soon, and we're not likely to have a national conference, so it really is a rare opportunity. And for anyone even just thinking about whether or not this is right, I highly recommend this. So that's all the formal slides we had, and we'll turn it over to questions now and some wrap-up comments. But first, I wanted to just say thanks for everyone who phoned in, and really we have plenty of time, so do flood us with those questions. Thanks.
And it looks like I, as usual, have a couple of questions, but we have a couple posted here, so why don't we start with those. The first being, what happens if you get a grant awarded, but the company has folded between the submission of the grant and when the awarding is actually ready to happen? What happens if the company fails?
I've never got that question, but you know, to a certain extent of it, it depends on the legal articles of incorporation that you had when you are applying for SBIR. And if there's some kind of ownership or transfer of assets from the company, like all intellectual property is somehow owned by an affiliate or a parent company, you might be able to continue the award, and you would have to discuss it with the program manager. But generally, I think you would lose the funding. Thanks. And that was from Kenneth Stedman.
And whoops, there's the right button. And the next question, does it matter if the 51% U.S. ownership is from a major U.S. corporation?
Yes, it can be, and it doesn't matter.
Very good. So if you have more questions, please go ahead and post them. Meanwhile, Leon, could you talk just a little bit about what kind of help? You mentioned a little bit about help through Business Oregon in terms of like up to $5,000 maybe to help someone to actually help you prepare an application. What type of additional assistance could be available through the SBIR STTR Support Center?
Well, if a company applies for this assistance, we do work with them to figure out what it is that they're asking for and need the most, and to a certain extent, tell them what we think they need. But in general, Oregon Best, and again, this is for that middle bullet, Oregon Best, out of those 3 levels, those 3 entities providing assistance. But at the most basic level, we do some introductory informational sessions, some outreach, and maintain a website with some information for interested companies. If you do kind of go to the next tier and apply for formal assistance, and we've had about 50 companies go through this in the 1.5 years we've been running this program, you have the opportunity to get some specific one-on-one consulting with me, or depending on what you need, some other experts. You will get some additional guidance on how to navigate funding opportunities and what might be right for you, how to register your company, and some general advice and assistance for how to write your grant, and potentially how to connect with resources or help being matched to specific resources like universities or other external consulting agencies that might be able to help you with the project you're proposing. So at a little bit higher level, we do provide some grant writing training and workshops for specific companies that look like they're suitable for the SBIR program, and we're currently in the middle of one this year, 4 in-depth sessions with a private contracting consultant. And then kind of finally, the top tier for the most qualified companies that look like they have a very eligible project, we provide private consulting with about 30 to 50 hours with an external consultant who helps you through all phases of both writing and submitting the grant. And that is, all of this, I should mention, is totally free to you and fully scholarshiped or funded by Oregon Best. And there's no matching funds or additional capital outlay on your part. So it's a very good opportunity. And again, we've helped over 50 companies last year through various stages of the process. We had about 20 submissions and 3 awards for phase 1. Typically by phase 2, companies are pretty experienced and need a little bit different form of assistance, but they typically do go on for phase 2. So thanks, and you definitely answer.
And by the way, that program from Oregon Best is funded through a Small Business Administration grant. So that's why it can actually be free to you.
And it is it is approved for a 3rd year, but it will end probably in October of 2016. So you don't have to
while you can.
You have a year, but don't dawdle beyond that.
Are you available by phone for a consultation?
Well, I'm not sure. Who are you asking? Michael, go ahead and if you're asking
probably
Steve,
you, because you're the expert.
Since you're asking me, the best thing to do would be email me or send your question to the Oregon Best website.
And we'll post the link here in the comments, so you can have a link straight.
I'm definitely available for a phone conversation, but the best thing to do would be to formally apply for assistance and we kind of run an intake process where I'll ask a few questions, and then you'll kind of be in the pipeline of support. But the short answer is yes. And I typically provide, depending again on kind of the tier and the company's needs, between 5 and 20 hours of consulting once a company is kind of taken into the pipeline.
Okay,
Thanks.
and next question, how fast are turnarounds between the proposal and the award?
So that varies by agency. It could be as short as 3 months, but it's often around 6 months. Thanks.
So it does take a little while. Maybe one more question for me. Just some quick, maybe just a couple of examples of companies in Oregon that have actually gotten an SBIR grant.
Great. Well, you have most of the examples, but I'll kick things off. So the example I like to work with was one of our award winners from last year's assistance program, a pair of OSU researchers that are spinning off a company called Waste to Watergy, and they have a novel means to basically turn brewery and other food processing waste that's really rich in organics into electricity directly. You don't have to generate gas or anything. And disposing of this waste, especially in this great state where we have all this produce, craft breweries and distilleries, is actually becoming an urgent problem. We can't simply go flushing it into the sanitary waste systems. So it's a great opportunity. You can find out more about them on the Oregon Best website. They received a phase 1 STTR, partially because they were from Oregon State University, but they received over $200,000 to kind of prototype and do a pilot of this, what's called a fuel cell. And they do plan to move on to a phase 2 from the National Science Foundation. And again, the company name is Waste to Watergy. They're on the Oregon Best website. And they did just a year ago complete a pilot with Whitmer Brewing Company. So,
just a couple of examples of OTBC companies that are not clean tech, just for a variety. We've got one company we're working with now that's a software company. So they're definitely software companies can get SBIR funding, and this is in the application process right now. It's not been awarded, but has to do with an education niche, specifically online education tools for kids with autism. So that's, again, something that National Institute of Health is interested in. Another example in the medical area, an OTBC graduate, Sonovate, between multiple SBIR grants, has raised, I think, the better part of $5 million in funding from the U.S. Army for their miniaturized ultrasound probe, which it turns out something the Army was interested in, both for field use as well as in hospitals for reducing the cost of healthcare. So it's quite a range of technologies. If you can imagine all the different parts of the U.S. government, they are interested in a lot of different things, all the way, as Leon mentioned, even to just really strong economic development stories like Department of Agriculture has funded a phase 1 to an OTBC company that does wind energy. So again, Department of Agriculture into wind energy, who knew? But I think part of that story is they like to support rural America and farmers in particular.
And the key thing there is that, yeah, they're supporting off-grid power for small to mid-sized farms to do things like irrigation that are very power intensive and are very often a big cost for these small farms. So USDA wants to fund that, even if the technology doesn't seem to be radically innovative or have a direct connection to an agricultural product.
All right. Well, I think we're, let's see, it looks like we're running out of questions. By the way, I'll also mention this is the second of these programs we did. We did the same program at 2 different times, just so people could hopefully find one of the 2 that would fit the schedule. We did record the video on the previous one, and we'll maybe in the comments here post a link to that also, because we did have lots of Q&A for that one, lots of good questions and answers. But for now, I think we can probably say we're a wrap. And I think this Actually, I think this one will get recorded too. We may actually delete this one because I think we had so many questions and answers in the previous one.
But we did like your questions too.
Oh yes, we did indeed. But I think we had many of those and more on the previous one.
Yeah, I did want to mention to the gentleman who might be interested in consulting, if you use the SBIR at OregonBest.org website, email address on our website, that message does get to me, so you can set up an appointment.
There you go.
And that doesn't apply. That applies to anybody on the phone call, not just the gentleman who asked the question.
And one more question did pop up. Nice examples on the farm. Do you provide ideas on agencies to apply to? I think, yeah, if you apply through the website, sooner or later, you can probably get a little help exploring possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is kind of one of the first key steps. And just because, very often I do what's called a funding opportunity search, where I look at several agencies, look for examples of history where the agency might have funded something similar. And very often, as Steve mentioned, like in the case of Sonovate, the medical technology was picked up by the Department of Defense. And the wind technology was picked up by USDA. So just because there's not an agency obvious match, it helps to go through the process to find out where perhaps someplace you hadn't thought of provides funding for exactly what you're doing.
This, by the way, is another reason to consider coming to the August 20 event, the Road Tour, because it's a great opportunity to sit down face to face and ask the people who make the decisions, hey, this is what we do. Would your department be interested in this? Also, if you look at the SBIR websites, this is the challenge, each department has their own website. There's the one SBIR.gov, but then each department of the government has their own unique website. But they'll all post information on what they are interested in, and they have contact information there. So you can send them an email, you can pick up the phone and give them a call and run your ideas by them to see if they might be interested. But yeah, Energy and Department of Agriculture and medical instrumentation for Department of Defense, you never know. They're interested in a lot of different things.
And very often, you have to take a little bit of the longer view, but very often there is an opportunity to get into a dialogue with the agencies and actually influence their choice of topics. So if you're working on something like aquaponic farming and it's really hot and developing in the tech world and really meets a societal need, for instance, as water is becoming scarce, that's something to discuss with them and kind of nudge them in the direction of funding it in future years. So every agency has a calendar. They release topics and have windows for application once, twice, or 3 times a year in some cases.
And they're all different.
And if you miss one year, you potentially can be on the docket for the next year or the next cycle, depending on where you are. So don't be discouraged, especially if this little snapshot of what you look at on websites right now doesn't capture what you're involved in.
All right. And let's see. I think, yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
Great idea. Thanks. All right. I think that is a wrap then. Again, please get in touch if you'd like to explore more ideas or get more help on your idea and submitting it for an SBIR grant.
Or if you have questions on the SBIR Road Tour on the 20th, those can also be emailed to me. And I look forward to potentially meeting some of you on the 20th in person. I will be there. I don't know. Steve's planning to attend.
I suspect I will be too.
And so hope to meet you in person. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And hopefully we'll chat with you later.